seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Here we go. It's the Sunday Sesh. It's been a long time. Happy birthday, Celtic. And what a wee gift you got today. The inevitable further drop points happened with our rivals and ever so closer to the league title. It's beginning to feel like all those Sunday Sessions in April, May last year, Terry, is it not, big boy? And you were at them all.
We might have to bring them forward this year, boys, so you could be in and around Valentine's weekend, maybe.
Yeah, I think so, mate. I think so. But we couldn't do a PMP yesterday. So let's say we Sunday Sesh today. And what a day we had yesterday in Glasgow, by the way. Big thanks to all of those on the bus who joined me. And of course, a couple of the viewers. Hail Times 2 for setting up as a table at Tingle and stuff. That was class. And Monty, fucking cometh the man, cometh the hour. He is a legend, by the way. I'm not just saying that. He is a legend. So nice to have met you as well. And that was a brilliant night yesterday. As you can hear by my voice, I am struggling a wee bit. But I'm up for this today because it is a beautiful Sunday, Johnny Logue, is it not? This is how it feels to be Celtic.
Oh, it certainly is. Can't get much better than cooking curries and listening to Rangers getting done by St Johnstone. So that came as a nice surprise.
Absolutely. I think, to be honest, the writing's been on the wall for a while for Gio. And we will be talking about that today not because I revel particularly at having pops at Gio Van Bronckhorst. I mean, I don't think he's someone who particularly pisses any of the Celtic fans. In fact, we probably
he's no threat.
Too much.
He's no threat. He's no threat.
Yeah.
He's vanilla, isn't he?
I think that's cost him. I think that's cost him his reputation a wee bit, though. I just think he's not been passionate enough. And I think the Rangers fans have been looking for him to be a bit more pissed off, a bit more upset, a bit more animated. And I think that sometimes we things like that. They did one of the radio shows I was listening to, they did a contrast and compare of Postecoglou's reaction to defeat 5-1 and Van Bronckhorst's reaction to the defeat the night before. And despite both teams getting 0 points and heavy defeats, you listen to the two sort of tones, the sort of, I don't know, just the level of ambition Ange spoke with was something that you could get hope from. Whereas Gio just sounded like a beaten man. And today, I don't think he survives past tomorrow. I think he'll be gone. I know there's talk that they might not be able to afford it, but my honest opinion is they always find money somehow. So I think they'll have to get rid because the fans are revolting. I don't mean like that. Well, not you, Bob McBob. But we've seen them arguing Was it Tav through a meshed fence? Were you one of those, Bob? Let me know. There is 116 people live though today, guys, and what has been a beautiful Sunday. Celtic's 135th birthday. Aye, it's my birthday too, but who cares? To the 116 watching live, do all that good stuff. As Phil McGinley. Where is Phil? I thought he'd have jumped on. I sent him a link anyway. Welcome on if you want, Phil. But aye, all the good stuff. Hit subscribe, hit like, give us a wee share, all that stuff. If you want to become a member, like so many of you have, feel free to. Terry, over to you. We'll start with yesterday with the nerves jangled when it was 2-2, mate. Were you saying, where the fuck's this came from? It didn't feel like it was going to be one of those days, and then suddenly it did.
It was a strange one, Boycie, because I didn't overly enjoy the game yesterday. I just thought it was annoying. It was stop-start. There was no fluency for the players, but there was no fluency for sitting watching the game on the telly either. I don't know what it was like for the guys in the stadium, but it just wasn't enjoyable watching it. That's what I said to John just before we come on. I suppose you're sitting there on 90 minutes yesterday thinking, fuck, this is back to 2 points. And at 2 o'clock today, we're sitting 7 clear, and you're thinking, what the fuck were we worried about? It wasn't a vintage performance. I don't want to pour any negativity on it at all, to be honest. When you've extended your lead to 7 points, regardless of how it's happened, absolutely delighted and over the moon. It wasn't a vintage performance yesterday. There were mitigating circumstances. We had a tough away game in the Bernabeu on Wednesday night. And as I said, yesterday's game, due to the officials and their use of VAR, it was just so stop-start. It was very difficult for Celtic to get any rhythm going. When we went ahead in 6 minutes, I genuinely thought, you know what, this is going to be one of these 5, 6, 7 type jobs, and I genuinely think it would have been, except the game was stopped, and for the 2-3 minutes for the decision over the Dundee United penalty, and from that moment onwards, the game just really didn't ignite until Dundee United scored their leveler just towards the end. And I was listening to the boys earlier, and that they'd said Dundee United hadn't contributed very much to the game, and they didn't, to be honest. But there was just a spell just before their equaliser where you could sort of think, I can see this coming here. They were just getting a little bit of good possession. You could see their confidence getting up. They'd had a couple of close shaves, and before you know it, the ball's in the net. And yeah, you think you've dropped 2 points, but as this team has shown, even in the last 3-4 weeks, this team has shown on multiple occasions they're never beat, and the resilience to go up the field and get a winner. And I'm quite happy for Kyogo this week, and I think we probably just need to call it out in the bus, because it was a kind of roles reversal yesterday. Jack and Magnus got the start. He didn't do anything wrong, but it was a bit of a laboured performance. He didn't score, and then Kyogo came on and got the all-important goal. So can't complain. I think if they continue to do that, where one starts and the other one can be relied upon to come on and make a difference, that's a winning combination. So not a vintage performance, a little bit sloppy. I didn't think Jens pulled up any trees. I think he loses concentration. He looks like somebody can be got at. But all in all, we've extended our lead at the top of the league, and I think it's done, to be honest. I said it last week. I think if we could get into the break with a 6-point advantage, I don't see any way back, and we're 7 points ahead. And to be honest, I'm not expecting Rangers to drop more points. I don't see them going and winning next week at St Mirren, for example. I just don't see it. And I just think this Celtic team, no matter what gets thrown at them from the opposition, from the officials, we're just going to find a way each game. Yeah, we'll come up a cropper now and again, probably due to a dodgy decision, but you might be able to play this back in the future and make me look really stupid, but I'm pretty sure the league's done. I'm
very confident as well, Johnny. I think that we've got as Terry says, sliding doors moments in this season will be 2-2 and looking like the gap at the top could be reduced potentially today to actually extend by a further 3 points. One thing, whilst I've been critical of Celtic in Europe over the last 10-12 years, one thing I think we have to accept is Celtic have become masters of domestic football, bar one freak season, right? It's a good ratio winning 11 at the last, or 10 at the last 11 titles, and I just feel right now they ain't going to drop as many points as what their rivals are. It's that simple. And with already a 7-point cushion, they can actually afford to. Not that they will, I don't think. I think domestically we've got an attitude, a mindset, a belief that is unrivaled and will see us through. And yeah, I mean, as Terry says, it seemed almost a bit flat when Haksabanovic got the first goal. Mark Kearney mentioned it on the Sunday Blether this morning, which you can catch up on YouTube. But like when he mentioned that, I thought it was kind of right. It was a bit subdued, the sort of reaction to the goal. And like I say, maybe the good thing about that is though, our Celtic maybe adopting this business now of the Europe's done, but we're pissed off. And when we're pissed off, it's just down to hard work now. Get goals. Don't need to be overzealous in the celebrations at the time. We're just here to do our job, get the title back, and have another crack at the Champions League next year.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be, isn't it? It's really just back to, as Mark Kearney would always say, the bread and butter. We need to get a Mark Kearney klaxon, by the way. That's how that fucking gets his name mentioned on here. But if Terry thought it was a bit hard work watching the game yesterday, he should have tried listening to it. On the, I was on the nostalgia bus yesterday. So, I went back in time and I had to settle for listening on the radio while I was at work. When one of the opportunities I got was driving around the bus, and it's even worse when you find out. In fact, I was actually quite relieved because I think I was about 3 minutes behind live time on the. Because when the Dundee United equalised in my time on the radio online, I'd put on our chat, fuck's sake. Terry put, settle, John.
When you put on fuck's sake, it was 4-2.
Just enough, for fuck's sake. And I went on to live score because I was that pissed off to see. I knew I was a little bit behind, but I didn't realise it was at least 3 minutes behind. And put it on, and I looked at it, I thought, that must be wrong. We can't be 4-2 up. But that was hard work, Terry. But it sounded flat. And it did sound like even on the radio, the commentators were saying how every stoppage is sort of slowing the game down, every VAR check that they were doing, or, for the penalty and non-penalty as it was. But, all that, it just kills the game. And it's even worse when you try to listen on the radio. But yeah, I think it is now just a case of getting back to the subject. We're out of Europe. It's a case of let's make sure we get back into Europe where we want to be next year, and that's dining at the top table without having to play any qualifiers.
Correct.
And I don't think I'm with Terry again. This might get thrown back in our faces next year, but I just don't see us losing 7 points. I know we came back from 6 points behind when Van Bronckhorst was appointed at Rangers, and we had less time. But I think we're a different beast to that. Like we're not going to let that slip. Not 7 points, not now.
I don't see it either. Yeah, I think you're right. And of course, as Terry says, this is all available throughout the season and can all be clipped. And we can make complete fools of ourselves. I don't like to get into the territory where you become complacent as a fan, even as a fan. But it's confidence this time is the overriding feeling I've got that domestically we have their number, and we've got the other sides in the league's number as well. Think how deflating and demoralising it is for the other sides, like St Johnstone recently with that late goal, like yesterday Dundee United. That's in their minds now. The next time they play us, doesn't matter even if you get a late goal against them bastards. They go up the other end of the park and score anyway. It creates a defeatist attitude in them, and I think, as I say, the gap will extend.
That's the difference, Boycie'S. Last year when we were 6 points behind, we still had hope, and we still thought we might just be good enough here. I don't think at the minute Rangers supporters, from what I'm listening online, they're just having no hope at all at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Terry, it's obviously always a soap opera in Scottish football. As you know, it's always big news stories if managers are coming and going. Obviously, we've got one that the club are desperate to hold on to. The fans absolutely adore. And right now, he's turned us from where we were 18 months ago to now is unbelievable. But I think very much his attitude has shifted. I think the league's now, yes, the priority right now, obviously, for Europe. But I think he is now looking at Celtic as, how do I make this team compete better in Europe next time round? And he understands the importance of winning the league being a key component to get to that level. But I think we've got a manager here who's very much not going to be satisfied, Terry, for just domestic bliss.
Well, we talked on Wednesday night after the European game, and we've talked about the process, and we wanted to see a reaction from the manager. Now, I don't know if we've touched on any of the other shows this week or not, but I was really heartened by Ange's performance, shall we say, at the AGM. I've just made a note of some of the quotes here, and these are his responses to some of the questions that he was given, and it sort of ties in with some of the stuff that we were saying after the game on Wednesday night. I'll just read some of them out here. So if we want to be a Champions League club, we have to be that on and off the pitch.
Yep.
We can make gains by being aggressive and agile in the transfer market. Other clubs our size are very agile. We need to push forward aggressively over the next 2 to 3 years. We're working at a good level now, but we are constantly looking to improve. We'll need to be more active in the transfer market. This will be uncomfortable for some. I know fans like to have their heroes, but to achieve the level that we will need, we need to be much more active. That I found all of those words very heartening, and they back up what you're saying there. I think he's looking beyond domestic achievement, and it almost feels a little bit like the message was for the guys that were sitting beside him at that table at the AGM.
Just take the words out of my mouth, Terry.
Yeah, there was an elbow to the ribs there for a few of those guys, and it's pretty much step up. You know, you guys need to step up. If we are to have this shared vision, this is what needs to happen. And he's completely right in what he's saying. And what he's saying, if I translate all of that, what he's saying is we need to speculate. We need to up the ante if we want to bring the success that I want to bring. And I suppose where my thoughts would be is he's called out asking for the backing. It's going to be interesting to see if he gets that and what happens if he doesn't get it.
Very subtle shot over the ball. That's what it was, Terry. It was just him going, I've seen what you do. Because I think Ange does his homework. Of that, there is no doubt. He knew who he was getting into bed with, if you like. And he'll have known, why the fuck did Eddie Howe take 4 months to join this club? Let's have a look at how they operate normally. And let's find, it only takes 2 seconds on Google to find stories or fans forums and, to find all about where does it went wrong. Now, we did Nostalgia on Friday. And very often, when we go back to that time, we sort of draw comparisons to the modern day and go, have we really learnt from our mistakes? Obviously, since, the Martin O'Neill era, hey! But, I would definitely say that one thing Celtic, I think, has been proven in history have done often is they'll back a manager, they'll get them a sorted team together, and then it's like, take the foot off the gas. And it's like, no. Just because you think Rio Hatate is brilliant doesn't mean there could not be a better Rio Hatate in this summer. And that's not me championing Rio Hatate to leave the club. What I mean is, as an example, never settle for what you've got. Always keep chasing for more. And the word agile was a very inoffensive term, Johnny. It was very bland, but it was very good. Because what he's really saying is, this summer again, we're going to be back at it. Don't think it's going to be quiet Januaries now because I've built a team. There's no such thing as having the finished article. It doesn't exist in football, particularly a club like Celtic, who's striving to balance, the sort of the power in Europe, because these clubs have far, far more greater revenue streams. Ours is selling footballers, qualifying for the Champions League. That can be our 2 main revenue streams if we do it correctly and at the right time. And what he's saying is, if I've got an Edward, for example, who wants fucking out the door, I'll not hesitate in cashing in, buying there and then, and getting rid of him. I won't squeeze another season out of him when he's already checked out mentally. What's the point? So he's already looking at this as going, even if I've got, let's say, a £2.8 million Croatian international, I should have a klaxon as well, Croatian international right back. That doesn't mean he's not looking at an upgrade there already and thinking, bought in for 2.8, punting for 10 to 15, buy a £5 million one who's better. That might be what he's thinking. Let's be honest. He's got an eye for value in the transfer market. That can be undenied. But I think Ange, I'm so glad you brought up those quotes, Terry, because I think he's acutely aware of where Celtic have slipped up. And I think he's also very curious, Johnny, as to how a club that size had only qualified for the Champions League for the first time in 5 years. I think he's a bit baffled at that, considering the domestic dominance we've just discussed.
Well, I think the answers lies somewhere in between where we've said it on the bus. When we talk about he never said it as so much on the AGM, but the Ajax example, I'll sell for 60 million. I'm going to replace you with 25 million. Not 2 million, like what we've been doing. You know, when we sold Tierney, for example, sold him for what 20, 25 million, replaced him. I mean, he's coming good now. It's got to be said, but you know, sell, buy cheap, sell big, buy cheap again. And Ange's basically said he doesn't want to be going down that road. If he wants to buy a player, if he sells Jota, for example, next summer for 25 million, and I know Jota cost us 6 million. All right. So he's probably going to be looking at somebody, all right, he sold him for 25 million. I want 12 million to replace him.
Totally, mate. Totally.
That's the road that Ange's going. That was what I'm sure he said that on Wednesday. I'm sure I read that somewhere online or on one of his interviews that I've seen online. He basically said that. And that's what you've been banging that drum ever since I started watching you on the bus, Boycie, you know.
Right. I mean, it's a case in point, Johnny. One of my favourite stats that I like to go to, Terry, is Hudson Edward broke Chris Sutton's transfer record. That was the year 2000. How can any football club that you're telling me is evolving and progressing not have broken its own transfer record for, I think that's under 18 years? Oh, come on. Don't tell me that's a club at any point's been ambitious, but yet had the highest paid CEO in the UK. How can we compete financially? Those sort of things. Anyway, that's another story. I've been over all that. I think it's important, though, that Ange's identified what many of the fans have, that this club has the potential, the fan base, the structure, all there, and the access because of the nature of the two-horse league. One horse, you could say. Because of that, it's all there for us. We just need to have a wee bit of belief. And instead of always boasting about having £30 million in the bank, he's like, we're going to need to keep investing in this. Apparently, the training facilities, they said at AGM as well, they've actually upgraded them. There's a new gym and something else. I'm like, that's all under the psyche, I think, of a coach who's trying to continually push us for bigger, better things. That 6-game Champions League campaign told me a lot about Ange's philosophy, whilst I think there's stubborn elements to it. I also think it's quite clever for the first time in there going, you can't complain because I've just earned you 40 million quid by winning the league last year. And secondly, it also highlights to the board, if you're going to back me, I've proven now I don't have the level of player there because that's proven in the results. So maybe that's one of the reasons why he's loath to tweak his style, because it can paper over the cracks, Terry. Is that maybe a different angle at it as well? If you get a result with 10% possession, the board would be well within the rights to go, you just beat fucking Barcelona, mate. What are you on about?
Do you think, Boycie, though, do you think he's kind of gone rogue with those comments, or has that all been cleared before they've gone on? You know, and you're okay to say this, you know, or has he just gone out on a limb and, you know, gone solo with his vision as such to try and put the pressure on the guys? I mean, the proof will be in the pudding for me. I was really enthused by his words.
Me too.
I'm really looking forward to January / the summer just to see how this plays out. I'm really taken from what he said. I'm expecting 2 high-profile leavers. I have to say, from what you said, I think he's kind of set the scene that's going to happen. Be it January, be it the end of the season,
and get used to it, Terry.
Yeah,
this is what's going to
happen.
happen.
January's too early to let anybody go. To be fair, unless it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, if we're 10 points clear, I don't think it's going to matter.
Bear in mind, market values, Terry. Sorry, market values are going to be a bit of a peak because the World Cup will just be Johnny.
Yeah.
And if that's what's fresh in the mind, fresh in the memory, that could elevate Juranovic from maybe the 10 million we think we could get from to 15. Do you know
I know you're picking his name, but he's the one that kind of makes the most sense to me. He's one that we could let go and think that's not going to have a massive impact. I mean, we can speculate around who we think the other ones could be. But just going back to the World Cup, I mean, what we see nowadays is if somebody has 2 or 3 good matches, all of a sudden they go from being a £3 million player to a £20 million player. Bassi, as an example, had 2 or 3 good weeks, and all of a sudden he's reputed to be worth X. And to be fair to Rangers on that one, they sold at the peak, and some of these guys, the right thing to do is to sell them when they're at their peak. And there are guys in the squad, and you're thinking the 27, 28 bracket in terms of age. If we don't sell those guys in this next couple of windows, we're probably never going to get anything in for them. So I think the club will take that into consideration as well. It'll be when's the right time for us to get the right fee for this person?
Definitely, and Ange's all over that sort of thing. He is the the untitled director of football as well as manager, Johnny. Just want to say quickly, Seamus. Yes, mate, YouTube member, legend, man. Thank you very much. And welcome aboard, big man. Of course, it's completely optional. Johnny, Monty Kaiser brings in an interesting one. Kaiser's wanting to get to the nitty-gritty of how we manage the money. And he's saying, Ange might have such, I think what Shat says, Ange might have such confidence in his player sort of shifting model that he'll know he'll get maximum value for those going out, and he'll be able to get players of a certain standard for less than you might think. Would he go down the road of saying, let me have the player trading money, I'll deal with that, see any prize money, you can put that towards infrastructure at the club or whatever it needs to be, Peter Lawwell's bonus if he's still getting one, his pension, whatever it may be, but give me the player trading money, I'll go earn it, I'll go there and spend it how I see fit. Do you think they would be that bold? I don't see them being that bold, if I'm honest. That's an interesting take from Kaiser, all the same.
Certainly is, because I think if there's one man who's capable of running it that way, it's Ange. He knows.
True.
He knows who he wants. And I was reading today online, I don't know how true it is, but this Japanese defender we've been looking at, apparently we can pick him up for next to nothing because of the way the contract situation is. And I'm sure Ange has probably had his eye on this guy almost from his day he walked in to us. I don't think he just plans from August to January to August. I think he looks a good 12, 18 months ahead all the time.
Yep.
So if there's one man who could pull off that system, then it is Ange, because I think he knows what he's all about. He knows what he's doing. He's quite savvy, and he knows the market. More importantly, he knows the market that other people in the United Kingdom don't know.
Yeah, I think as well, Terry, right? See, one of the things about Postecoglou's background, which is quite interesting, why Celtic's a good fit for him, by the way, and he should remember that as well. If there were Brightons of the world batting their eyelids at him, I'm sure he does. I'm not telling him what to do. Well, maybe I am. But I think Ange is definitely someone I think he looks at football from a different prism, because he's came from a real underdog league like the Australian one, then into the J League again, the Asian Champions League, competing in that doesn't really have the same ring to it as the big Champions League that undeniably you'd be watching on the TV and stuff. I think he's looking at Celtic almost from a lens going, do you know you're fucking, like, where you are? Do you know who you are? I think he's looking at Celtic quite up there, savvy, and going, well, of course I could obviously help the club, yes, but I can elevate my status as well. All they need to do is have a little bit of belief. This football club, Terry, is ginormous, absolutely massive. Virgil van Dijk did the overlap last week with Gary Neville, and he says, I'd already played for one of the biggest clubs in the world. I just didn't know it until I joined them. And he goes, and too many people don't know it yet. And I think even then, you almost got the vibe off him. He's sitting there going, the reason people don't know is because we never reached for the stars, Don't just reach for the stars. Give it a fucking love bite, man. Get right involved. It's there to be taken. I think Celtic could be a Champions League side year on year, and we start seeing transfer fees in the 10 to 20, not because it's just about transfer fees. I sound very one-dimensional when I say that, but I just look at clubs in lesser leagues like Club Brugge and Ajax. They don't bat their eyelids at spending £10 million on the right player.
It's not about the fees. It's about the value that you're getting for that money.
Yes.
If you're paying £1.5 million for a player who is a £10 million player, you're getting value. But if you're paying 10 for a player who could then become 50, you're also getting value. You're just getting value at a completely different level. And I think probably what it's maybe taken is a guy coming in from far side of the world with just a brand new, fresh set of eyes and seeing it from a different perspective than someone else who's maybe been ingrained in the club and passionate about the club. Ange has no emotional link to Celtic. He does now. He will do now, but he won't have had beforehand. And he's just coming in from a completely different culture, and he's able to see things clearly. Whereas some of the guys who've maybe been around the club for years and years and decades, it just becomes part of your normal day. And as you say, you maybe don't strive for the absolute potential that's there, because you don't see it, because it's just become
We
a
can't
normal way
compete.
of going. Yeah.
Financial disparity, the gulf, all these sort of terminologies have all become the norm. Celtic accepted that the playoffs were a lottery rather than something that they should be taking on with a real will to win like they would our own league competition. And I think you're absolutely right, Terry.
That's the bit that frustrated me, Boycie. We're not expecting Celtic to go and beat Real Madrid. We're not expecting Celtic to beat, the cream of Europe. But I expect Celtic to go and beat the teams that we've lost in the qualifiers over the last 15 years. Your Ferencváros, your AEK Athens, Cluj, Maribor, I think might even be in there as well. Teams like that, that's not acceptable. Getting beat by Real Madrid in the Bernabeu is acceptable. It's unrealistic to think that we're going to go there and get results, but it's not unrealistic to think we should be swapping those other teams aside, and we absolutely should. And Boycie's touched on it before. All of that is missed revenue where we had a reasonably clear pathway to the millions that the Champions League brings, and we passed up on it for whatever reason. And like I say, those are teams. Yeah, we will not beat them every time, but we should be beating them 2/3 of the time. We haven't been doing that.
But Terry, that's exactly what Ross is saying there about, when Ange comes in from a completely different background. 20 years ago, when we got drawn against a team like Scontorigo, for example, or Scontorigo, that was a given. We're going to give them a right doing home and away. Right?
Now it's like, could be a banana skin, eh?
But the problem was we just kept on with that mindset. So that 20 years became 10 years. And what happened was, in that 10 years, between the 20 and the 10, those teams all grew. Those teams all developed and all improved. And we didn't, and we didn't see them doing it. So when we suddenly came up, I remember the first time, I think it was Aberdeen got Scontorigo, can't remember what year it was, and they came to Aberdeen, they beat Aberdeen, and we all went, fucking hell, what's going on here? These teams don't beat even teams from Scotland, because they all closed that gap, and we didn't see the gap closing, because we were too close. We were too close to it.
Johnny, I think there's good points there as well. I also think there's been some strange sort of strange takes from the Celtic board in terms of where to propel the club, or what they see as the vision forward. Mark was saying, again, we're quoting Mark Kearney, sound of Clarkson, but I mean, he was suggesting last week, I didn't know this, he was suggesting there is an actual wage cap at Celtic right now. And Callum McGregor's the highest paid player. And I think, Mark, and if I'm misquoting you, Mark, or I've got you the wrong, do correct me. But I think he was suggesting something like club captain Callum McGregor has to be the top paid player at the club as well. So if you brought in someone that broke the wage structure, I think he would be automatically getting offered that or something. I could be wrong. That's what I took from it. But I think the wages that Callum McGregor will be earning, again, I'll go back to it, are less than what we were paying some players 20 years ago. Now, this isn't paying people for payment's sake, just to say you've got 50 grand a week footballer, Terry. But I don't know how in business this happens. Even with inflation, I think the added revenue as well from Champions League money, the fact during these periods of times we've smashed our sponsorship record deals, our kit manufacturing deals, time and time again. We have got 60,000 season ticket holders. I mean, 52,000 season ticket holders. I mean, this is a club, when you look at it, that you're going, how the fuck can they be paying less than what they were 22 years ago? I don't understand how any business could show any sign of evolution, Terry, that is paying not yesterday's money, but let's be honest, 2 generations ago money. That's not a club that's completely progressing. Again, I like to stress, I am not just saying pay people more for the sake of it. It's far from that. I just think the optics of it, if you look at it from the outside, you would go, that's a club that's standing still, not progressing. I think Ange is looking at this a wee bit as a bit of a free hit. I think he knows what the potentials are. I think he knows what we've underachieved. I think he knows what we could do that is well within our parameters as well. That's not going to be, going bust, and all this nonsense that you hear. I think he wants Celtic to dream a wee bit, Terry.
If you look at any business, Boycie, your costs go up year on year, and within the football industry, your costs are the amount that you would pay on transfer fees, the amount you would pay on wages. Obviously, there's lots of other costs, but I think the ones that won't have gone up for us are the amounts we pay on transfer fees and the amounts we pay on wages, because we're still where we were 20 years ago potentially. And one thing you can say for sure, if you've quoted Mark Kearney incorrectly, he'll certainly let you know. But going back to the point, I mean, obviously, we're not completely privy to what players are earning and things like that, but I think it would be safe to say that Henrik Larsson's probably Celtic's top earner of all time. Do you think that would be fair?
Yeah, I think
and
so.
that's
100%.
that's going back 20 years.
You signed that deal in 2001. You signed that 40 grand a week deal.
Like we should be breaking our transfer record and our wages peak every 2 to 3 years. That's what would happen in any normal business. Your main outgoings would be increasing every few years. And
that's not us asking for reckless spending, by the way, in case anyone thinks that. I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they see where we're coming from here, Terry.
Well, nobody's accused Ange of calling for reckless spending or wanting the club to go bankrupt. He's clearly called out for us to take things onto a new level. And
he's giving you the template how to do it. He's telling you, we need to be agile. It's not a dig, but it is a dig. Just, read between the lines. David Logue joins us. What's happening, son? How are you?
I'm doing great.
You on the double shift today, mate?
I'm on the double shift today. I'm proper Tyson Fury today.
David, is it true that Livingston player's a client of yours?
What's that? Oh, you mean the who? Who's that?
Not Livingston, sorry, Dundee United. Dundee United player with a haircut.
Oh, mate, that's
one of yours.
The apprentice that done him.
Oh, I don't know. There's a few good shops in Dundee that I don't think will be admitting that he goes to that.
That was rash. It was even more rash than this challenge.
I think it looks like one of the COVID cuts that everybody was doing when all the barber shops were closed. He's obviously thought, fuck it, I'm quite good at this. I'll just keep doing this.
I thought it was an extra from Vikings.
Oh dear. It's Friar Tuck.
What let's talk about then what's going on across the city then, David. Do you think they'll have a manager this time tomorrow?
Yeah, I think they will.
Gio. Yeah. The manager.
Do you think it'll still be him?
I think he will. I think
he's gone. I think he's gone, but when it happens it's up for debate.
I don't know. I don't know if they'll be so quick to pull the trigger, eh?
Do you think they'll try and hold on to the World Cup break? And hope that they'll get done by. It's going to depend very much. Well, if they don't pull the trigger tonight or tomorrow, it's going to depend on Wednesday. It depends what Hearts team turns up Wednesday.
See the way I look at it.
I don't think they'll sack him. I think he'll walk away.
That may be convenient if he does.
I don't think they can afford to sack him.
He sounded very deflated. He sounded very deflated today. He sounded very, very defeatist.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things as well is this will get looked back. If you were, say this was Celtic in this situation, they'll look back at it and go, what was the point in waiting to the World Cup? If we'd sacked him 2-3 games earlier, we were only 4 points behind. It was a title race. Whereas now I think this could be viewed, if they wait to the World Cup, Johnny, and answer your question, say they drop points again in the next 2 games, every chance. Let's be honest, because they're on the ropes.
Who they got?
We've got Hearts on Wednesday.
St Mirren away the weekend.
I mean, you could see them potentially, guys, let's be honest, slipping up again. And if they fall further behind, then I think they would reflect on it and go, see if we just acted at the time rather than wait to the World Cup. We were in touching distance, 4 points, 3 derbies to go. We've heard all this crap before with the COVID season. Remember, it was about 11 points ahead and they thought they were going to still turn that around. But I think what's happened is Celtic are dominant, David, right now domestically. I was saying this earlier, I don't know if you've seen any. I was like, they've mastered this domestically, right? Yeah, and that's not just under Ange. Last 12 years. I mean, how many titles have we won out the 22 titles in this millennium? 17 of them are signed. It's mad. I think we'll get our bit done, but I also think that's always easier when you know your nearest rivals who had some amazing achievements last year, and I also think the navigation of the Champions League playoffs, PSV was a fucking phenomenal result, beating them
They
over
should
2
have
legs.
kickstarted their season. They should have kickstarted their season.
This is it. But then they didn't back the manager. That's what we've all been talking about with Angie. And you go, this is what can happen when you become complacent. A manager qualifying, get an injection of, say it's 30 million that they can't bank on, they hoped rather than knew they would get, and yet didn't spend one more penny. Now you're seeing what happens.
And yet, as soon as they qualified for the Champions League, what did we all say on here? We were saying it on here, we were saying it in the chats, they're going to spend a fortune. They are going to admit
that, yep.
That money's going. You know, we thought they'll spend it. You know, they just, if they raked in 40 million, and we thought I thought they're going to spend about 20 million quid of that. Not only is it going to hopefully, as far as they're concerned, but hopefully help them in the Champions League, but it's going to really strengthen us for the league. You know, and they never done any of it. And that was, I was gobsmacked that they didn't.
There's a lot of stories, David, and I think you'd said something a few months ago. I think it was me and you were talking in the TNF, and you said you wouldn't have been surprised if Rangers dipped their toes in the J-League market, right? Now, interestingly enough, because you thought, well, there's a model there to be copied that's successful. Celtics. What about these rumours now? Kevin Muscat. All Australian managers must be good, David, isn't it?
Is that right? Is that what? Is this honestly coming up?
That's the links now. Is apparently Kevin Muscat.
Put that on, yeah. Is that because he's also got the Rangers link as well, though? That Muscat's name's getting mentioned. I know he wasn't there 10 long. Minutes.
He was hopeless.
I know he wasn't there long, and I know he's, you know, but he's got that Rangers link, hasn't he?
David, the thing is with the Muscat link, it's not about Kevin Muscat. Let's not focus on him. But we wouldn't have blamed Rangers if they'd been dipping their toes in the J League over the summer, considering the successes we'd had. We also wouldn't blame them if they are acutely aware of what Postecoglou's, you know, successes have been, and maybe they're now valuing a bit higher what managers or players do in leagues like the A League, the J League. It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to maybe, for want of a better word, copy Celtic's recent 18-month model, because there has been a lot of surprising success stories. And we can't deny Postecoglou's been better than anyone thought he would be. Let's be fucking clear on that. Whilst I've maybe had far greater reservations than others, I think he's exceeded expectations in such a short period of time. You wouldn't blame your rivals, David, if they wanted a bit of that themselves.
No, I mean, what it's one of those ones. Though, like, is it really the right model to go down? It's just, it almost seems a bit lazy on their part, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, really, we're just getting a stay manager because they've got a good one. Like, just, I'd be pretty disappointed if I was a Rangers fan if that was the way of their thinking. You know, I'm still surprised they didn't go down the Dutch market and the transfer market with Gio's links to obviously the Dutch league, and I'm surprised they didn't even look at China. But
David, here's my takeaway on that. If you want my honest opinion, I think when you look, like I was just saying there, at the lack of spending, despite qualifying for the Champions League against the odds, I think that maybe tells you that whilst no, we can't part ways with Gio because of these successes, maybe they're buying because of the league failure last year, and it was a 7-point gap at one point that he then loses the league by, was it 4.6 points? But I think we kind of cruised, I think it'd be fair to say, to the end of the season. It was in the bag for a while. I think that's maybe, there's been a larger cloud from that, I think, than what we've realised. And maybe the reason you've not seen Dutch players or players for the Chinese league is because deep down, Rangers weren't willing to totally back a manager they may have thought would get to this stage by November, December, where he's facing the exit door. Maybe those funds, I'm not saying they've got loads of money, I don't think so. Obviously, they've not. They must have been paying off some severe debts that they don't want to tell the world about.
Gio's telling you they don't have any money.
When you sort of talk about them not backing a manager, did they not give him a 3-year deal?
They did, but what I'm saying is, though, the evidence that they've seen from him taking over the last season domestically, I just wonder if, as we say, and we can't be hypocritical, Celtic quite often just float tunnel vision on domestic stuff. So his European successes, which should be far greater to achieve, far more difficult and far more respected, actually come secondary to clubs like Celtic and Rangers sometimes, because we're so, as long as we're better than them. And I wonder if the reason, as David says, you've not seen an influx of Dutch, which I expected, or a player for the Chinese league, which I wouldn't have been surprised at. I wonder if that's maybe because they felt, based on his domestic performance last year, that he might be behind in the league again come quite an early stage, and they might be parting ways at some point. Terry, what do you think of that?
You've just caught me in the middle of it. Something I can. I want to know what would have happened if they didn't get the Champions League money.
Well,
If they couldn't afford to go out and support the manager in terms of player recruitment, where the fuck would they be if they didn't get the dosh? I really don't know. They could point to the fact that they went and bought a left back for £5 million. I think he's played twice, and Barisic is still first choice. Barisic is still costing them goals game after game after game. What's that would say?
Stan fan Celtic. He said just saw footage of Martindale outside Ibrox with a bucket of KFC. Probably nothing.
I was in the camp where I expected them to go on a transfer splurge in that last week after they qualified. I really did. I was just completely shocked. Just touching back on the Australian thing, if they brought in an Australian manager now, would they be able to get back into the Sydney Super Cup in time?
The Ange Homecoming Cup. I mean, that's got to. It's funny as well. See with that tournament, I totally forgot, Johnny. See when we were panicking about links for Ange, Brighton and Villa and all this nonsense. He's probably got something in his contract where he can't leave Celtic till after that homecoming tour. I mean, that really would have been up shit creek if Ange fucks off before it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, Ange's homecoming tour, and Ange doesn't fucking bother turning up for his own party.
He's really Brighton.
He just leaves us all standing at the altar.
I mean, again, if we focused on stuff like that as well, is this again maybe an idea that's been pitched by Ange or pitched to Ange that he's let Celtic know about? And he's going, this is 6 million, guys, girls. Get our arses over there. And by the way, I also get my balls tickled when I'm over there quite a lot. My ego gets inflated. He loves all that as well. Of course he does. But Johnny, as we say, we need to find ways to try and close the gap in terms of the financial disparity. And this is one hell of a way to do it. 6 million. Jeez, baby. That is good money coming in for playing a friendly tournament in any country.
Yeah. Oh, obviously, the next one that's going to be online is going to be Japan, isn't it? That next summer or next, the next decent break. Your next summer is going to be Japan, isn't it? That the next close season tour is going to be Japan next year.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't surprise me if there's a return to Japan. We've been on for 48 minutes. I think we spoke about Rangers for about 6 of those minutes, more hat trick. So I do appreciate the message, mate, and thank you for watching. But promise you, rewind to the start. You'll enjoy all the Celtic chat. You maybe just jumped on at the wrong time, mate. But there's got to be creative ways to make money. Not only the player trading that we think we're in good hands with, David Ange. When we were talking earlier, what's your thoughts on Ange's sort of his words saying about being more agile in the transfer market? We like the sound of that because it sounds to me like he's going, I know I've went through the gears quite quick, but the only way this club, this we never stop thing is going to carry on is if we start shifting through some more and quickly. And that means I've already identified in this short space of time, call me a bastard, but where the weaknesses are, even with players I've signed already. There's no shame in that. We need to move on from being like, oh, well, you signed him, and you'll need to deal with him. No, if they've came in and it's not worked, but he thinks he can get a couple of quid for them, sound, change. Or even if it's not, I'm saying it's not worked, if he thinks he can get better. That's maybe the best way to describe it. I'm all for it, David, being more agile in the transfer market.
Yeah, and when he says we never stop, he means as a club. He means not just on the pitch, but he just means in general. I think let's not take our eyes off the ball. We've always got the next window coming up. We should be proactive and already looking at potential signings, because if these players that I've brought in are going to play as well and do as well as I think they will, there's going to be the bigger club, the bigger transfer market vultures coming in ready to pounce, and we have to be ready and accept that we may lose one of these guys, but that's fine because I've already got my eye on my next shopping trip to Japan or wherever he's looking. So no, it almost puts you as a fan at ease when you hear, listen,
Yes, mate.
you might have to accept that we're probably may lose an asset in January, or we're going to lose an asset definitely in the summer, but it's fine. I've already got the next player coming in, and I'm hoping that this guy that we're probably, if we are going to sell, he's going to make us 10, 15, 20 million, depending on how big a contract we've got him on. So don't worry about it. But so long as the board backs him up, this is the thing. Ange has to. He's always he's quite clever in his little. It's like subliminal messages to the board to be saying like, listen, I'm putting it out there. We might lose a guy, but I expect to be backed. Yeah.
And David, so just quickly, can I just say one thing as well? Very interesting you brought that up there. Length of contract. Now, one thing we can all be in agreement, Terry, and I'll come to you, mate. One thing we'll all be in agreement is Celtic did seem to shift a bit when they were bringing in almost every player on a 5-year deal, 4-year minimum. That, again, isn't Ange saying you're going to be here for 4 or 5 years. He's not naive. But, again, it's protecting the value of the player for a far longer period. So you're not having to increase his wages within a year because, his market value is potentially going to drop if you keep him there. Terry, it's actually very clever having so many assets on long-term contracts, isn't it?
That's a business. That's a business side to it. Well, yeah, except the main one. But that's a business side to things. 5-year contract really just means 3 years because your selling point has now moved to 2 years. If you let a player go to 1 year, he is nowhere near as sellable for a reasonable fee. So 5 years really only means 3. 4 years means 2. If you sign somebody on 3 years, it's really only a 1 year deal because you're wanting to do business at 2. 2 years is your point where you either sign an extension or you get rid, because once you go below that 2, as Rangers, again, sorry for mentioning them, they're now in a position where they've about 7 or 8 players who are all now running down the last year of their contract, and the vast majority of those are probably going to walk away next summer for nothing, even though they are £50 million players, £40 million players, or whatever we're led to believe they are. So 2 years is the point where you then have to renegotiate. Either you sign another extension and you stay for a longer period, or we punt you at that time because that's when we can still get the right kind of fee for you.
Yeah, I think you've just nailed it, Terry. And again, everything's intertwined. It's all linked. Because again, what's another way of protecting the value of a player or inflating the value of a player? Having on their CV that they're regular Champions League players. They've got 12, 18 games experience in group stage football in the Champions League. That can inflate fees. Again, meaning we're getting more close to that sort of bit ridiculous EPL sort of valuations. You see players who wouldn't get a game for us going for 30 million down there. And I just wonder if see the fact I'm just coming with this different set of eyes, Johnny, right? He's coming from the outside, as we were saying earlier. I wonder if he's looking at the board going, I'm not getting something. I'm missing something here. Why did you sell Van Dijk for £12 million? I know it was like 7-8 years ago, but he'll be looking, as I say, I think he's done his homework. I think he's looked at the history and he's went, undervalued your own player. Sold with only a year to go, Edward. Sold with a year to go, Ayer. What were they worth? If they were 18 and 13 million, what were they worth? As Terry says, the 2-year value mark. I think all these things he's trying to step up a bit. And sometimes it can just be a different set of eyes, coming from a completely different background, not immersed or in the mire of Johnny that, we can't really compete at this level. We can't do it. And it's been years since we've been there. He's looking at it with a complete fresh set of eyes, completely different take on it all. And he speaks like one of us, I think, when it comes to, he sees how big a football club Celtic are.
Yeah, because he's got that Aussie mentality. They
true.
have no fucking. I'm an Aussie and I'm not inferior to any fucker. In Scotland, although we shouldn't have an inferiority complex because we're meant to be narky little bastards, but for years we've undersold our players. I've lost count of the amount of times you see a player from. I still can't believe we got Jota for the money we did from Portugal, because teams in Portugal do not sell their players for £6 million. I mean,
True.
Not a guy that's getting a call up for the national side.
The amount of times that they've an English Premiership team will buy somebody from even Holland, Portugal, and that, and we're talking 50s and 60 million quid. And I think, never fucking heard of him. I've got no idea who this guy is.
The other thing you have to think about Ange is
you're gonna have to censor him. So yeah, he's just too distracting. That fucker. So he is.
Johnny, I swear, I was trying really hard to engage in what you were saying, pal. And see the last 3 sentences you said, I've got no idea what you fucking said, mate.
I've got no fucking idea what I said either.
All I was doing was going, did I bring that comment up? Did I not bring that up? I'm trying to fight the laugh there. I'll not read it out, but Kaiser, you are a naughty, naughty boy. There was a point earlier made, David. I think it was to me, so I'll answer it and then I'll get your take on it as well. It's Steve O'Matt, whose name I'm seeing more and more often on the bus. So a big thank you to you, mate, for the support and enjoying the channel, hopefully. Or the bus. I hate calling it the channel. I hate all that shite. But he was saying he thinks the asset would be Juranovic. Would I be particularly bothered? Would I be particularly... I mean, I think he's a good player. But I think if we're getting the right price, I would say he's one, maybe the one. I would think you'd get probably more than I think he's worth. But he's a sexy name. He's a Croatian international. He will, for whatever reason, get you that sort of inflated fee. And I think he's one that if we didn't have, people might be surprised to hear this, but we might not miss as much as they think. And I also have every faith, based on the comments that we've been discussing from Ange at the AGM, that if we were to lose Juranovic, then that agility in the transfer market would mean another player coming in to try and stop the force and nature Tony Ralston from being the long-term Celtic number 1 right back, which of course is inevitable, is written in the stars. He will be. I'm only kidding a wee bit. Well, kind of. David.
I'll agree. I think if we do lose one, I think I said it on the breakfast bar as well. Like he would probably be the one that would lose. I would only, until the comments we made today or recently, I would have been concerned about only having Tony Ralston to call upon again. But sounds like Ange's got his fingers in lots of pies. So he may, going back on the way of Ange's, the way he's brought a fresh set of eyes to the club. I think we need to remember, like he's come to Celtic with. He's been part of the City Group now, and the City Group are an absolute juggernaut when it comes to being proactive into the transfer market. And I think he's brought that mentality to the club. He's got the contacts, he's got the resources now. That when you're dealing with the City Group, we're not just talking about Manchester City. We're talking about I can't remember the name of the clubs that are part of the group. I know they've got them in Japan. They've got Melbourne. They've got the Japanese
New York
club.
City.
It's an absolute juggernaut.
Is Ange's old club not part of the City Group?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's been a part of. I think he's been part of both of them, in Australia and Japan. So he's coming with that mindset, those resources. He's come to our club and went, "What do you mean you've not? What do you mean you've got a shopping list that's still got the same names on it for the last 5-6 years? Why are you still targeting these guys when we've got an absolute humongous database that we could be looking at?"
Yeah.
Do you remember, what's his name? Is it Mark Lowell?
Mark Lowell's came up. Yeah.
I mean, he's not really. We've never heard anything from him at all, or whatever. So he must have the same sort of contacts. I mean, he's from the City Group. He was worked with Ange before. Ange was more than happy. In fact, if not Ange recommended him to come to get him. So they must be looking at lots of things in that department, surely.
Well, I mean, this is the thing as well. I mean, whilst it looks like Ange's reinventing the wheel here, as David just touched on there, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Remember the Celtic transfer list, like of potential signings, got leaked.
We've seen it, yeah, we've seen it. It might have been written on the back of an envelope.
It was embarrassing. It was actually embarrassing. I'm trying to think of some of the names on it. I'm sure the comments will remind me.
Joe Hart was one of them.
Was it?
But it was the writing beside it. Go back and see if he's a bit cheaper this year. He's
got an Asda Whipsy label, one of the yellow Whipsy labels stuck on the side there. Maybe get him now.
But it was like, you're going, this is like, so see for Ange Postecoglou again, I think he'll have done his homework, he'll be aware of these wee songs. I mean, that was our banter year, wasn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, that's when it got like to the cringe level, Terry. I mean, again, from an Ange point of view, do you know what I think, pal? He's going, like, this is a walk in the park to improve on these standards. Like, this is like, it's a shoe-in for me to look good here. Because, wait till you hear, I've signed a player from Japan. Everyone will, wait, they'll fucking lose their tiny wee minds. Because all they've been looking at for the last fucking 3 years is some centre-half at Port Vale. Fucking unbelievable, Terry.
We might not have to worry about it because Southampton have just sacked their manager. So let's
who's that, John?
Regan's just put on there that Southampton have sacked their manager. So that'll be the next club that gets connected to it.
Tomorrow. No, and Regan, that was probably 4 hours ago, and he's just seen it now.
Regan's the nicest guy ever, but he just sometimes reminds us he doesn't actually read any of our banter in the group chat because we'll be talking about a transfer link and he'll just come in with the article like 2 hours later. I'm like,
that's maybe the last time. It's maybe the last time they changed their manager about 3 years ago. He's only catching up on it.
Signed for Southampton.
Here was something that I was quite surprised about, Boycie. Whenever Ange came in and we brought in those Japanese players, it was almost, wow, there's a market that's never been touched. Look at these players. We're getting them in for pretty low outlay, really quality players. The Japan squad was named last week, and I certainly took a bit of a breath when I realised that 2 players who we think are good footballers in Hatate and Kyogo didn't make the Japan 26.
Yes, go on.
But when I've actually looked into it, 23 of that 26 are already playing across Europe. So that market has already been tapped. We were bringing in sort of the next sort of layer of players that were available. The top Japanese players had already made their way into Europe, but you probably couldn't have named any of them. You're probably thinking, wow, there's guys coming from Japan into Scottish football. Wow,
rest assured that's our ignorance, though, mate. That's our ignorance, pal.
Yeah, the Germans, the
Germans are really keen on them.
The Italians, all those leagues they've already done that market, but it wasn't one that had been. Well, the English Premiership had done it to a certain extent. I remember there was a few Japanese players at Fulham at one stage. I think there were a few.
Inamoto, it was Arsenal, then he went to Fulham. That's actually interesting as well.
There's a guy at Fulham, there's a guy at Arsenal at the minute. Sorry to cut across you. Looks an excellent he looks an excellent fullback, Japanese. I think it's
Tomohashi is called. They got him from the Italian.
He looks an excellent player.
He's a right back, and he's keeping Tierney at left back.
Wow. Johnny, here's an interesting one, though. Not that we're trying to be negative, but just when you start looking back again at Celtic slip-ups, and it's maybe, we had Nakamura. We were ahead of the curve when it came to this sort of thing. I accept he was already in European football. He was at Regina. We signed him from there for £2.75 million. But look at the value for money that does. I mean, look at the marketing he was doing in that, like in Asia at that point in time. We probably could have played a friendly in Japan at that point, such as Nakamura's standing in his hometown. I think Terry's right. We're not signing guys that were as household a name in Japan as a Nakamura. We're signing guys that are on the periphery of the national team. Whereas Nakamura would start every game, I would have imagined. What the fuck happened? How was that not like a model where you would go, Johnny, let's do more of that, please? Because see the first time we seen Kyogo, I remember doing a pod with Tony Haggart, a great guy, on the other platform, and he went, first thing I would be saying tomorrow to Ange Postecoglou, I think Kyogo scored a hat-trick or something. He goes, any more, please? And you think about it, you go, how the fuck did we not pick up on this? And we should have been at the front of this 15, 16 years ago, Johnny. And it's great that we've jumped on the bandwagon now, what Ange has on our behalf. But it just goes to show you as well how many opportunities there's been to be in this realm way before what we've actually we've struck it now.
There's been plenty of opportunities to jump in the Japanese market. I mean, I can't remember his name, but there was I think one of the first ones from the Japanese market I remember, and I know it's going to sound like I'm talking motorbikes, but his name was something Honda? And he was...
Yes. Yeah, he played for Honda. And
I
man,
can't remember how long ago that was. I mean, that was before Nakamura's day. And I mean, he was forever linked with Man. I'm sure he was linked with Man United nearly every season.
there was Nakata as well. If that's what I'm thinking.
I think you might be thinking of
Nakata was
Nakata.
at Roma.
Because
Nakata
Honda was
the
after
one.
Nakamura.
Aye.
Honda's
Was he
after
after, was
Nakamura.
he? Right.
Yeah, you think you're thinking Nakata.
Hidetoshi Nakata,
But-
1977 he was born, by the way, if anyone wants to check that. I've not done that in a while. But he was...
There's been
he
plenty
was
of
the-
opportunities. Like, we
he was the
had the
midfielder.
chance to go in there when we signed Nakamura, and we were all, we thought we might have gone back in there, and then we thought, well, maybe it's because he's just a one-off. But the Germans have proved that the Japanese market isn't a one-off.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kagawa, the boy that's in the Frankfurt, he looks a player.
The other one as well. And it's not because I'm trying to associate lazily because they're in the same region. But remember the marketing we were getting in like South Korea with Ki Sung Young?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, see when he joined David, his
Player, man.
technique was a shambles. Sometimes in Scotland, you've got to have, it's not just about technique, you need to have that wee bit of fucking, I don't know, that wee bit of like,
he wanted more time with the ball than he was ever going to get.
And who's that Korean lad that plays for Napoli? He looks like he's fucking built like a French. He was playing for Napoli.
I know they just signed him out of nowhere, this boy, last season. And he's an absolute, I can't pronounce his name.
He's not even a first team regular. He didn't play against Rangers the other week there. He's not even, I don't think he's even a first team regular. He looks a player.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure he's a defender, but
he won Italian Player of the Month a couple of months ago. Sorry, the Serie A Player of the Month a couple of months ago as well. He does look a player. Go back to what you're saying, Terry, about us being surprised at the of not including Kyogo and Hatate in the World Cup squad. I think, is there a chance that do we still do the wild card where they can bring in a player last minute? Do you reckon?
I think there's one of the guys that they've named who is still doubtful, and he could be replaced at some point. He's a striker.
I'm sure it's a 3-man sort of reserve list, if you like, and it's basically for exceptional circumstances he can go in and replace one of those already in the squad, David. I'm sure it's that.
Have they had to put? When do they have to put their official team lines in? The squads in for the World Cup.
Well, that's them kind of getting at different
Put
times.
theirs in, really, haven't they?
There'll be a deadline, but Japan's named their sort of squad. It's done. Portugal have done the provisional squad, which is a great headline. Jota called up.
There's 60 people in it.
55 of them.
Yeah, but that was a FIFA thing. All the countries put in a 55 squad, or they were invited to put in 55 because they were talking about it on TalkSport the other week there. Because I mean, obviously, if you're 55th in that list, you can pretty much still book the month off, But it wasn't just Portugal. I mean, because I did see in some areas it did come out sounding like it was only Portugal that had done this 55 squad. But I think all of the squad team countries were invited to at least put in the 55 because I think what it was apparently you've named that 55, and if they're not in that 55, you can't drag them in out of nowhere because they've had a wonder couple of weeks.
Yeah, I hear you there. I just think as well, it's so easy to be ignorant to the abilities of these countries because we're so caught up in our wee goldfish bowl, But there was a brilliant point that came in as well. Why? I can't remember who it was. I think it was Kieran. So thanks for being on the bus as well, mate. And he was saying, why is it though that in this country we can't produce anyone? We're having to look in for markets and go, are they producing good players? Are they? And by the way, none highlighted.
At least you think we are. At least you think we are.
That's fucking mental as well. I never even thought of that. But do you think Andrew's been impressed with what he's seen in Scotland? My honest hunch is that he's not been.
No, I don't think so. But I
thought you were just going to say no there.
No. Moving on.
The guys that have gone to Italy have all impressed. It has to be said.
They have.
Ferguson scored a cracking goal just on midweek or might have been last weekend.
2 goals in 2 games, I believe. Two games in a row.
So is it just a case of the fact that the only players that were worth looking at have just went off to Italy, really, because I mean, there was a couple of times. There was a few people in the comments, remember saying that, "Oh, quite like the look of Ferguson," or "I quite like the look in." What's the other boy that from Hibs that went to? Is it Doig? Did Doig go to?
Doig left back.
Doig. Yeah. These players' names are getting thrown
Hickey
about,
as well.
and
Hickey.
yeah, and he's tearing it up at Brentford by the looks of it, or he was.
Statements you never thought you would hear. Tearing it up at Brentford. And he's not the only one that's got a Celtic link with that David either. We've got big Ivan Toney. But I just think when it came to Angie's sort of outlook at Scottish football, I've got a feeling, Johnny, he ain't all that impressed by what he's seen. I think that goes from our youth setup right across to potential signings from our market. I've never known Celtic to go, or to sign that amount of players, and none of them haven't been from domestic apart from the backup goalkeeper.
Well, yeah, that's just what I was going to say. The only player he has signed that's played in Scotland isn't even Scottish, and he's not getting a game for us. Not that we expected him to. Don't get me wrong, I've said it before. Quite happy. I like Siegrist. I think he's a good goalkeeper, and I think he will be he will replace Hart at some point, probably next season at some point. But and we've also discussed it before. He's always not been happy with the backroom, not the backroom squad, the B team and what's coming through below, because he's had people in working with him, such as McManus. And this is the way you're going to work with me for a little bit. You're going to see how I want things done. Then you're going to go back there and you're going to do it. Because if you don't do it, then I'll find somebody else who will do it. So, but that's going to take 2-3 years before we get anything out of that. At least 2 or 3 years out of that before we get anything from there, unless we get a remarkable talent come through. I hear some good things about what's his name, Vata. Can't remember his first name now. Rudy Vata's son.
Rocco,
yeah.
What a name!
Hearing some good reports about him, but he's only a young kid. He's only, what, 17, 18?
Well, did we not lose? Who was the boy that went to Leeds? Was that not someone's son? Hjelde. Hjelde.
Yeah.
And his dad had played for Wimbledon, was it? When they were actually in the Premier League? I think it was Wimbledon. Someone could correct me. I'm sure they always do.
He was the one who John Hughes, when he was manager at Ross County, he compared him to Van Dijk, didn't he?
He was 17 and John Hughes was like, obviously John Hughes just gets excited, you know what I mean? And we love him for it. I love John Hughes. I could listen to him all day. I like he's got an infectious character, but he was saying, Hjelde, 17, he goes, he's as impressive as I've seen at the back domestically for a young player as Van Dijk. Under pressure, maybe. But David,
at 17 to be playing in the Scottish Premiership, I mean, that takes a bit of doing. 17-year-old playing in that position. Young kid.
Totally, Johnny, you're spot on. David, a few though have slipped through the net as well. I know people talk about what's he called? Doak, who went to Liverpool.
He's doing brilliantly at Liverpool.
He's doing well.
But here's the thing, he's doing well. He's getting a lot of rave reviews. He's playing for Liverpool under 18s. He played for Celtic in a Celtic Rangers match.
Still wasn't enough to keep him. Last
season, he could have been part of Celtic's first team squad this season. Yet he's away playing under 18s. It's a completely different, it's an absolutely different level. And yeah, do you know what? The guy, I wish him all the best, but is he going to make that Liverpool, or is he going to be one of these guys? He's at Liverpool until he's like 23, 24.
Fuck that argument, mate. How are we losing them to under 23 squads, development squads? That's what I don't get. That if they think the pathway at Celtic is trickier to navigate than a Liam Morrison, I think his name was, he went to Bayern Munich. And you're going,
Bayern Munich.
Surely that's harder.
Yeah, I mean, what's Moffat to Blackpool? Went to Bayern Munich before him, was there not?
I think it's that B team.
Lost two in quite quick succession to Bayern Munich.
Hepburn, is it? Hepburn and Morrison.
I don't know his name, but there was two. Definitely two within a matter of months.
There was two, but that whole B team in the Lowland League, that's a load of pish. You know, what pathway is that you're going down and playing 5-6 levels below the level that you want to be? That, to me, that doesn't work. I don't see the benefits of that. I really don't. You're playing against grown men, but you're playing against guys that are finished or guys that have never made it or guys that are never going to make it. How's that going to take you to the next level? I think if they go and they speak to these clubs and these clubs show them a pathway, probably on a screen with a projector, but you can see what your development looks like on a better salary than what you're on at Celtic. At least you can see the journey from A to B. I just don't know how the young lads at Celtic in that lower league B team squads, what that pathway looks like from there to there. It probably isn't the clearest.
I think that's a brilliant point. But this is the difficulty. And by the way, this is a square that we need to try and circle that is very, very difficult to do. Because, David, we've got competition from under 23 squads that can match our wage budget. We were talking about the wage budget earlier. Now, they, as Terry says, will dress it up all lovely. They'll fly them down. They'll get the real VIP treatment, even though deep down you're flogging them a dead horse in the sense of actual first team opportunity at half of these clubs. It's going to be impossible. But do you know what? They're going to be developing as players. What development do you get in Scotland when you're playing against, no offence to them, it's not their fault, far, far lesser players, even in these development games, David, than what you are? It's night and day, the youth setups of these other clubs. So when you're playing against Bayern Munich, if you're Liam Morrison, you're playing against Dortmunds, etc. of the world, they're under 23 squads. That's a standard, right? When you're in Scotland, it's a gulf. Whereas Celtic might be doing everything like an elite club, but who you're playing each week ain't going to develop you, right? Then there's the money side. Are we that side of it's the frustration, because Ange hasn't seen enough from the guys they're playing against to justify elevating players to the first team squad, David, right? That's quite obvious. But also then we're resigned to losing these guys if we cannot compete financially with what they can offer these players that might never play for the first team, but such as their budget, David, they can still afford to go, why don't you come to us for 10 grand a week? We can't afford to have guys on 10 grand a week that aren't going to be in and around the first team, David.
Yeah.
Do you know?
When you look at the quality of Ben Doak's playing in under 18 teams, but even when you see the highlights, look at the grounds that he's playing on compared to what he'd be playing on if he stuck around the B team for another year or two. Yeah, obviously, I think I've seen something like 34k a week or something daft. I don't know if that's what he's on, if guys were just a bit of tongue in cheek there, but we also have to look at, we've just spent 5 minutes there saying that we don't think Ange rates the youth team or the players in Scotland or the youth setup that we have. So what was the conversations that he had with the players? Did he say enough to convince them to stay? We're saying that the club might have been desperate to try and keep Ben Doak or Moffat or Dembele or Robertson or whoever, but that conversation with Ange might not have been enough, or convincing enough that he would be getting the right development route to the first team anyway. So
that's a good point as well.
We don't know what Ange's conversations have been with. If Ange really wanted to keep Dembele, he'd have kept him, and we would have seen him maybe getting a chance in the first team this year, because he's went to some French team that I'm pretty sure only got promoted this year. They'll be right back down. I think they're doing. I don't think they'll do it. Yeah. He went to.
It's gone tits up for them, has it not?
Yeah, so
Great terminology, Terry.
Rest.
Way over my head.
I'll tell you what, Terry, I'll set him up and you can knock him down, mate. Yeah,
no problem.
It took me a while to actually get that, because I thought you said mates.
No, he signed for Brest, but it's gone tits up for him.
No, I get it. It's never funny when you need to explain it.
Celtic da banter, man. Celtic da banter.
I'll be the straight man, and Terry can be the comedian. Eh?
Here, see on this whole youth thing. All right, you might think a player isn't ready to go into the first team, but when is he going to be ready, and how do you get him ready? We're allowed 9 substitutes on that bench on an SPL game. Why not put Rockelvat on there instead of fucking Applegaard 5 minute at the end of the match, McCarthy 5 minutes at the end of the match? Put Vat on there. If you're 2 or 3 up with half an hour to go, throw him on. How's he ever going to be ready if you don't throw him in there and get him ready?
It's that whole chestnut when you go to a job interview. It's always when you go for a job interview.
Things like this.
I like it, Terry, mate. That was good. Did you see? You can feel
Yeah.
it off him.
No, I'm into this. What's the point in having a guy there that you've signed on loan and you're bringing him on for 5 minutes? Honestly, what's the point?
You're bang on.
Stagnating the rest of the team.
He doesn't trust McCarthy. He doesn't rate McCarthy. You're bringing the guy on who's at the last throes of his career for 5 and 10 minutes to see a game out. Bring the kid in. If the game's in the bag, throw him on. Have someone else there. Have two of them. Have 2 or 3 of them on that 9-man substitute bench. If the game's tight, you don't bring them on. If the game's done, you throw them on. There's plenty of times the game's done by half-time, 60 minutes. Throw the young guys in there, see what they're made of.
Here's one interesting aspect of it, Terry, and this is where we're all guilty. Myself, very much so. I can't deny it. If we don't look like we're making strides in recruitment with signings of international players, such as an Abelgard, I would have said we hadn't done enough in the transfer window. That's the thing. So they've got to appease the support as well by looking to be busy and looking to be active in the recruitment process. However, you're bang on the money, mate. And no wonder you got pissed off there as much as I kind of liked it. But I was like, the thing is, what does it do when really Abelgard has been signed to keep a wee idiot like me, tap him in the head and go, see, we signed a Danish international, what's your problem? But if there's no intention really for him to have any impact in the first team, which we're getting to that stage now, it doesn't look like he's fancied as well. James McCarthy already a case in point. All we're doing is hampering the development then of whoever that next kid who could maybe come in for 10 minutes and play the holding role. You're back on the money, Terry. But we can't have it both ways. And I have to hold my hands up. I'm guilty of it. I want to see the club making these signings. And Abelgard probably appealed to me. If he came out and says, my strategy is going to be Vata is going to be getting 10-minute, 20-minute game appearances to see out the season, I would have instantly been on this bus saying, that ain't good enough for me. So I can't, do you understand? Like,
why did Abelgard appeal to so many, though? I'd never heard of him.
No, I know. Just because he was a Danish international, the same way as we know.
He came on for the last 10 minutes of a game and got a cap.
He's played
that
one
international thing,
cap,
though, mate, you know?
Yeah, he won cap for Denmark.
Mate,
I mean, no idea how long. He might have come on for the last 5 minutes. He's still got a fucking cap, but he might have played the whole game. I don't know. But that's.
The guy might be a good player. He might be a good player, but he's not showing anything to the powers that be to put him onto the pitch for anything more than a cameo.
Yeah, well, we can't make any judgment on him because we've barely seen him play.
I
mean, if you put the YouTube video again of him on his Celtic games, he wouldn't be able to put anything on it. It'd be the shortest YouTube video in history.
You're right. This is the difficulty, though. David, would you accept you're a bit guilty of that as well? As much as it's brilliant mid-season to go, what about the youth? Deep down in the transfer window time, what are we looking forward to? I hear that I'm promoting 2 players from the youth. Unfortunately, we're all like little mini tabloid newspapers in our own wee head. Like, no, I want a signing, mate. I want that signing. I think Terry's bang on what he's saying, David. I think it's actually really short-termism and a bit naive on our part to always think that's the way forward. Just to appease us, sign a player for the sake of it, where really guys like Vata or whoever it may be, we're going to never know if they're good enough or not. And right now, Celtic, the one thing I will say, and I don't blame Ange, he's got to make decisions based on a footballing level, who he thinks good enough or not. But you know one thing, it does feel like it's been a while since we had 1 or 2 always break. I mean, folk think Martin O'Neill, sound that klaxon. Sorry. Martin O'Neill. But he was actually, if you watch what he was doing in that road to Seville, I've never mentioned this, by the way, you know. But
spoiler.
He genuinely was integrating or trying to integrate guys like Jamie Smith, Stephen Craney. You look at that final season, me and Phil covered on Nostalgia. Check it out on YouTube after the buzz.
Was it not Martin brought Maloney?
McGeady, Maloney, 100% Maloney started up front against Stuttgart and scored. And McGeady in Martin O'Neill's final season played every week. And you're going, I don't think we've got anything close to that. And I wouldn't have thought O'Neill was as for it. This just shows you, though, you're conditioned to think certain things. You would think that Ange would be the one promoting more players. And this, obviously, there's 2 sides to it. Ange hasn't been impressed. fine. Business is business. It's got to be ruthless. But I'm also surprised that there doesn't seem to be any sort of cluster of players coming through when you look at times like that where there really was an elite Celtic team, yet there was far more opportunity, it seemed, for youth players back then, David. Do you know what I mean? And I know I talk about them all the time, but I think it's a fair comparison as well.
No, totally. See, you have to, even when you look back at the COVID season when we lost pretty much the entire first team squad, it was the whole, well, here's an opportunity to see the youth team, because there was about 7 or 8 players that had never kicked the ball for the first team, got their opportunity, and I don't think there's any one of them that made me go, wow, he's one for the future. And anyone that did even look slightly all right went to the MLS or went to Arsenal, went to where did that boy go to? One of the other boys went to the Prem, to West Ham. The boy with the headphones.
Oh, yeah. The double barreled.
Uncle Flex.
No. We bought him from West Ham.
No, we bought him from Arsenal, and he went to West Ham.
Yep. He went to West Ham.
Oh, we got from Arsenal, he went to West Ham, that's right, yeah.
That's it, Joy. Listen, I remember my first pint too, mate. Don't you worry about it.
I was sure we got him from West Ham.
No, he got him from Arsenal. Arsenal
went to West Ham. But that was, again, it's a brilliant example to bring him up, David, because I think Brendan was attracting, because of his name, he was attracting guys. Uncle Flex coming for Arsenal. Okay, he's not a headline signing, he's not a Croatian international, but he's coming from Arsenal's youth because he thought, the flip of what we were just discussing earlier, he thought Celtic was the better pathway. He thought he would become a better player at Celtic. Terry, that's totally changed. Is there still a wee bit of the hangover from the Lennon era? No offence to Neil Lennon, as I always say, history be kind to him. I still love him. But I think the reputation probably went down the tubes from Rodgers to Lennon that youth ain't getting a chance. Think how many scouts have had meetings going, Karamoko Dembele, remember his name? It's on that sheet of paper, again, because we all use those sheets of papers for our transfer links, you know. And they would be looking at something like Karamoko Dembele, go, wow, he fell off a cliff. What happened there? Do you think, Terry, the Lennon effect, and I don't like to have pops at him, it's not my style, but do you think that has been a bit of a turn off for youth players to want to see the future at Celtic?
I'm not sure. It's possible. I think that season in question, obviously it didn't work out anywhere close to the way we expected it would or we hoped that it would. But if you put yourself into the manager's shoes at that time, he would have been under serious pressure to deliver that 10. And if you put yourself in that position and you're picking a team, are you really going to throw in some young guy who's untried and untested?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm going to put it right back to you then.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about our obsession with trebles being a big problem now? Because fans see it as a disaster if you exit a League Cup. Whereas, why is the League Cup not being utilised as a tournament like the English clubs do? And like, fucking hell, Jesus Christ, twice in 5 minutes. But like he used them, Martin O'Neill treated those competitions as a chance to play young players. Remember the Tynecastle game? I think we beat Hearts 5-2 or something. It was all youth, Colin Healy and all that in the midfield. And you thought, he's given them that chance. Now, I think the obsession with trebles almost hamstrings us, Terry.
Well, here's the thing. Say we go into the next... Well, say we start out in the League Cup. I don't know who we played against in the first game. I haven't a clue.
Ross County.
Okay, so Ross County. So say we go to play Ross County and we put out the guts of that B team.
Yep.
We're probably going to get beat. What's the point of that one match? That one match isn't going to develop those players. I think...
Oh, come on, no.
No,
it's got to help. It's
one
got
game.
to help.
190 minutes.
But why does it need to be one game? It gives them a taste. It's more than nothing. Surely, Terry, this is...
Nah, I think there's a far better opportunity now with 9 substitutes in the SPL.
Okay.
There's no reason why you can't have 3 kids on there every single week and bring them on when it suits, not in a situation where the game's finally in the balance. Bring them on and in a home game where the result's comfortable and they can get used to it and they can start to develop into it. I thought there was a rule. There was a rule. There definitely was a rule previously where two of your subs had to be homegrown. I don't know if that's still there.
If we want to progress as a footballing nation and develop, that's That's where it should start. If you're not allowed to have 9 substitutes on the bench, it should be at least you have 2 of your youth team on that bench
2, 3,
to give
4.
them. How else are we going to progress as when you look at the likes of Belgium and how small a nation they are and the level of players they're producing now. I mean, I don't follow that league whatsoever, but if we want to be trying to reach those aspirations, then stop stifling our youth players. Give them the experience. How are you supposed to get experience if you're not going to give any experience?
But I'm going to push back again, though. I'm going to push back again, Johnny. I'll come to you next, mate, because I know you've been sitting waiting in the wings, mate. I could see you're eager to come in, mate. I love that.
West Ham. Wait, bottom for West Ham.
No, we didn't.
No, I know. I'm joking. But I tell you what. See, the one thing I'm going to push back on is, I think it's a far steeper learning curve playing in the sudden death nature of knockout football that matters to the fans. Everyone now knows trebles matter so much. That's a far steeper learning curve than coming on for 20 minutes, Johnny. In a game that we're 4-5-0 up coasting. Yeah, you'll learn a bit. But I think sometimes being under the pressure, that's when you start realising what it is to play for Celtic. Because Celtic is every game is a knockout game, really. Surely not?
I can see where Terry's coming from with it, but if the game's already won, you're 4-0 up, then there's no pressure. But if you're going on there saying, right, we're in here in a cup competition and we've got to win this game and get us through to the next round, because these supporters are demanding that we win a treble. Because like you said, Russell, it's become sort of pretty much expected that we win trebles. Whereas, I mean, I went through a lot of years of my life. We didn't win trebles. We didn't win fucking league titles. Didn't mind trebles.
Totally, mate. Of course.
So not only do they get the experience of playing against seasoned pros, they've got that pressure of playing for Celtic in a game that really matters. What Terry's talking about gives them it on a bit more regular basis, but it's only,
of course,
you're only coming on if we're already 3-0 up. If we're 3-0 up, mate, you'll get on. If we're not winning 3-0, you're not getting on, mate.
I want to build our players' confidence, though. But if you put them in a League Cup game against a Ross County and they bully them and they get hammered 3-0, look how quickly our fans can turn on play. I don't want to see that boy anywhere near the first team ever again. What's that going to do for that player's confidence if he's getting chucked out and then we get knocked out the League Cup? All right, next year we'll try again with the youth team. We get beat again. It's just I think there has to be, baby steps. There's no point in chucking 6-7 of the youth team in there to get
David
humiliated or
I
battered.
hear that, but is that maybe the softy approach that's maybe it's just the era we're in? Maybe it's just the era we're in. You're right. I think a lot of players back in the day, you needed these tough lessons. It makes them a player. I always watch, for example, Open Goal. I think I've spoken about it before. I think it opened my eyes up to how a player's psyche actually is from all the generic media stuff that they did throughout their career. And you got real insight. More often than not, 9 times out of 10, someone Cy Ferry's interviewed will have replied saying, that was that lesson, the toughest one. See, getting ripped by the manager to shreds. That's when I knew, or getting ripped by one of the senior pros. That's when I came of age. That's when I started getting it. Sometimes these tough lessons, but maybe that's a bit old school. Maybe that is, and maybe you're right with the age of social media, David. If you're 20 years old, you're going to be active on
social media.
You're going to be active on it, aren't you? You're going to be searching your own name and you're going to be reading all those negative comments. It is a different era. I need to accept that as well, Terry, don't I?
I think...
Now you're getting a bit older as well, Russell,
I think you've got to drip feed the kids in. So going back on what I said earlier, bring them on if the game's done. Let's forget about that. Let's go back to the likes of a League Cup or a Scottish Cup. Early game, you're fancied to win, you're playing lower level team. You don't go and you don't throw a team of 6, 7, 8 B team players into that game. You play a strong team and you drip feed 1 or 2 in, and they're playing alongside their McGregors, their Carter Vickers, Kyogo, Jota. They're playing in the team with those top players, 1 or 2 of them, and they're learning that way.
That's fair.
But you're knocking into a League Cup game. You're putting in 7 or 8 of these young lads. We lose the game. We're out of the cup. They've had but they've had 90 minutes experience. I don't think that's going to do them any good. But if they're playing in a team with the top stars, they're learning from them, they're learning the habits, they're in the dressing room, they're hearing the manager, they're listening to the players, they're watching the reactions, they're getting all of that learning, and 1, 2, 3 of them are getting game time. I think that develops the young lads, and you win the game, and you go through the next round, and you do the same thing as you go through the competition. You can use those competitions to develop young players without putting the result of the match in any kind of jeopardy.
Look at even you have to look at like what Man United are doing with that Argentinian lad. You know, I'm pretty sure he's been getting some game time once the Europa League was kind of, they've managed to qualify. They're into the next round to start playing a boy that they obviously believes a prospect from their youth. He's getting to learn off the likes of Ronaldo and obviously these levels of players. But they've not just right. Okay, Europa League. We'll just start this young lad from the beginning. He's almost, and now he's shown glimpses of obviously he's a very good player, and now he's starting to earn his spot on the bench and beginning to get some more game time. I think that's a better way of doing it. Having a good blend of youth and experience to bounce off of. You know, have that energy and almost not carefree, but you know they're eager they're fearless almost. The youth, but having that experience to back it up and keep them grounded. And I think Terry's spot on. I've got to agree with what Terry's saying.
No, I just wanted to push back on it because I'm trying to give examples of where it has been used in another way. And what that actually led to, as I say, was, if people remember, playing like Liverpool Anfield. Okay, we won 2-0, but Jamie Smith finished that game. Do you know what I mean? You're going, fuck, did he get in the team by then? Well, because Martin O'Neill had seen him in a very tough environment enough to think, I can trust him at this. But we have other news. It's just filtering through. Check your earpieces. Because we have hit the 3,000 subs. Yeah!
Target met then, eh?
Sensational. On my birthday as well. Brown Warrior says, well done. David Ferguson, 3,000 is fucking well, Boycie. Well done, mate. I appreciate that, David. It was brilliant meeting you at the live show. You know, I'm blown away by that. Like 3,000 and under a year. We're doing all right, Terry, aren't we, big boy? You've stuck in from the start. You're part of the old guard, mate.
Good to see you still on, David. It was nice to meet you that night too, mate.
Yeah, legendary. And it's not about us sitting there going, oh, we're amazing. It's fucking, you know, we're in it for the wrong reasons, whatever reasons. Shut up, you fanny. No one cares. Do you know what I mean? All it's about for us is trying to entertain and have debates. I think today, the Sunday Sesh, tell me one of you who knew we'd be talking about Celtic's youth setup, David. We didn't. It's just, this is the nature of the bus. We can go down peaks and troughs. We don't put time limits on the show. I value your time, of course, but sometimes it's great just having a wee beer, having a Sunday Sesh, and chewing the fat, Johnny Loke. Isn't that what it's all about, big boy?
That's what it's all about, boy. 2 beers, and like I say, just talk about the boys and enjoy the fact that we're now 7 points clear.
Aye, totally, mate. And you know, we'll leave on that note because it's been a brilliant Sunday Sesh. It's been the longest show I've done. I've hosted in a while. Not as long as a nostalgia, but you know, that's still ongoing. I think actually I'm about to jump on that the new for Friday. But no, a big thank you to the two Logue traders, and Terry Robb, the face of PMP, and a legend on the Sunday Sesh. Thanks for your time, because I've took up loads of it. I really appreciate it. Happy birthday, Celtic. We're on the top of the league, looking down on the Rangers. Here's Sutton. Good night.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.